Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Lion update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. This podcast is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. And with baseball in full swing and football season around the corner, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting. From Major League Baseball to UFC to tennis and NFL futures, BetOnline remains your choice for sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. Head to betonline.ag today and take advantage of their industry-leading VIP program with level-up bonuses and weekly cash boosts. Penn State fans, are you feeling confident that the Nittany Lions can win college football's national championship next season? Lock in your futures bet at betonline.ag today. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to State of State. I'm Tom Hannafin. He's Justin King. Today, we're breaking down some recent comments from James Franklin as he appeared on the Triple Option podcast, which is hosted by Fox Sports reporter Rob Stone, and also joined by Fox Sports analyst, former Alabama Heisman Trophy winner Mark Ingram, and former Ohio State head coach, former national champion Urban Meyer. So I know a lot of people are shaking their fists at that, but James Franklin did dive into a lot of different things in terms of the future of the sport with the CSC, what's going on with NIL, but also expectations for Penn State football in 2025. And that's where I want to start here, Justin, is the big piece that people took away from this interview, which took place within the last week, and you can check it out on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, is that there was the question posed by Rob Stone, who's a friend, and Rob said that, there's the expectations about Penn State is that Penn State is believed in up until a certain point. And James Franklin said, quote, "We have to embrace that. We finished 5th in the country last year and people were still pissed. You have to embrace that, but I understand and fully embrace we have to take that next step. It's winning those big games. We have a core group of guys who are going to rely on heavily. We don't lose the games you aren't supposed to lose. We have a tremendous opportunity to change that narrative." So there's a lot of elements in there, Justin. The irony is Penn State finished the season against Notre Dame in the semifinal of the college football playoff. Notre Dame went on to play in the national championship, yet Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois earlier on in the season, and the entire world basically collapsed on itself. Meaning, how could you lose to Northern Illinois? Well, you can honestly say that for the vast majority of James Franklin's tenure, Penn State does not lose the games they're not supposed to lose. And it's such a rarity in college football across the board. You see most programs stumble at some point unless they are a juggernaut, something like that. I think you could even classify Alabama losing to Vanderbilt last year as a good Vanderbilt team, but Alabama should not have lost that game. That was a far more talented roster and staff. Shouldn't have lost that game. So it is this anomaly within college football that, yes, people will come at Penn State for the 2-game season, and I will acknowledge that. But still, Penn State doesn't lose the games it's not supposed to lose. How freaking difficult is it to get to that point from your experience?
I think just the casual fan doesn't respect the artistry of winning, to be completely honest. And it comes down to like organizational structure when the things that you're talking about transpire where there's just no lacking when we win the games we're supposed to win, and that's like a consistent thing. Whether it's like people might take for granted, like the Steelers going never having a losing record, or just level of stability. Again, in sports, is so hard with so many variables that happen amongst 100 different personalities, 50 different things that happen on a support staff. So to continue to have the outcome that doesn't go below a certain baseline, I think any investor, when we're now talking about private equity, would love that in a stable asset, right? And then all of a sudden, one time, you got a shot to go to the top. So I think that's what every program's looking for, and sometimes it's how you build it. We talk about around exposure and value around the program, and just not taking for granted how successful James has been in doing that at Penn State. And that's probably what I echo, or my sentiments that I echo a lot, where it's like, yo, it's so structurally sound that like it can only go up. You could take an evaluation of another program that might seem attractive in this moment, but are you willing to deal with the chance that, hey, this could be a 2-10 program, or the whole thing could flip upside down on our head because there's not an infrastructure that it's standing on besides the Penn State brand and the history, but like from what this program has built, I think that's extremely critical.
The one thing I love that Franklin said, he said, quote, "Our first game is Nevada, and people say that isn't a big game. Well, lose to Nevada and let me know if it's a big game."
Right.
And it's just this perfect explanation of the 1-0 mentality. I know a lot of people will bag on it, and I've had my issues with it in the past for sure, but it's like there's only one acceptable outcome for that game, for so many other games that Penn State has played, that sort of situation, where you're expected to blow out your opponent. We can even point towards the Bowling Green game last year. That first half, everybody and their brother was like, what is going on? What are you doing? That proved to be a good MAC football program for Bowling Green, and they actually had a bunch of guys go to the National Football League. So you can look at it in hindsight and feel a little bit more comfortable about it, but tell me if at halftime people felt really comfortable. So it's the fascinating thing about this program and a lot of other programs around college football is that there's one acceptable outcome for about 80 to 90% of your schedule. And then on top of that, you have a fan base, an athletic department, a university that expects you to be in the college football playoff, that expects you to compete for a conference championship. And now the expectation to compete for a national championship. And that was the other element of this interview, is Rob Stone was alluding to that, is like, hey, it seems like you have a national championship team on your roster. What do you think about that? And James olayed that question. And he's like, yep, we have a tremendous opportunity this year, and we have a great group of guys, and we're going to try and do something special this year. You and I talked about it months ago when Jim Knowles got hired. Jim Knowles, I believe to this point, is the only member of the existing staff to openly talk about the goal is to win a national title in 2025. James Franklin's still holding the line and being like, I'm not going to put that shit out there. He's like, we're going to focus on one game at a time. And that pressure is only going to mount as the season goes on. And you know what it means to play for this team and see how the expectations mount as the season continues. What's it like managing that pressure? It's one thing in June, but what about October, November?
I mean, that's where having a structure or infrastructure comes into, right? Because you resort back to your habits or what you're used to in terms of the whole organizational structure. So, I mean, you fall back on what you know. So if the only thing you know is being ultra competitive or doing things a certain type of way, or however the discipline and accountability that you need to know your plays, like the standard that's set, you hope that transitions over later into the season, and when other teams start to get lazy or get tired, because I mean, guys are dealing with injuries. Injuries come with mental obstacles that change how a player approaches the game, the confidence that they play with. And so trying to keep everything intact. I mean, honestly, the game of football is trying to, like, again, to raise the basement as high as possible. They say you're only as strong as your weakest player, and that's a theme amongst the program. And so, I mean, that's really what it comes down to when you build a sustainable program, especially in this day and age in college football.
Yeah, it's so difficult at this point in time. And I'll get to more of the future of college football that Urban Meyer raised on the triple option with James Franklin here in just a bit. Mark Ingram, obviously a former running back, stellar running back, won a Heisman Trophy, is that he wanted to talk about Nick Singleton and Kaytron Allen. No shocker there. James Franklin said, I was surprised when both Nick and Kaytron came back. He said, I thought it was going to be similar to when Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren were here. One left, Theo, and one stayed, and Tyler. We aren't sending guys to the NFL with 400 carries and the league thinks they're beat up. It's going to be great for their longevity. Also, we have the chance to have one of the best offensive lines in college football this year. Then we went out and we got some help at wide receiver in the transfer portal. That's going to help our running backs as much as anyone. So first of all, that surprise that both guys stayed, and he talked about it in this interview, is that we're in the playoff last year. And we're having these one-on-one conversations with players and families about, are you staying? Are you going? Do you want to come back and complete your degree? Do you like your draft projection or do you not like your draft projection? And also, do you want to come back next year to potentially contend for a national championship? Those conversations happening in the middle of the playoff is insane. And then on top of that, yeah, Justin, best case scenario is we keep both Nick and Kaytron. But how much do you have to sit there as a coaching staff and be like, we might lose one or both of these guys. We're going to start all over, and we might have to start all over very, very shortly.
And that's the point of recruiting, right? I mean, they had Tyke Hayes from Aliquippa, and they had a top running back, and they came from Bell Vernon the year before, and Messiah Mickens is another kid that's committed. And when you stack running backs and you have a philosophy of still going to high school and recruiting guys and developing, I mean, it kind of gives you the leverage to let guys develop at their pace and deploy them to the next level when they need to. And then it's more like just reloading. You know what I mean? So I think that's what Penn State's philosophy has been. And I think it's going to lend them well in this day and age.
There's excitement about Keemon Spell, but that's years off.
Keemon, but years
and it's
off.
like, hey, does he actually wind up going to Penn State? So there's that whole situation. Currently on the roster, there's excitement about Cam Wallace. There's excitement about Quentin Martin Jr. There's excitement about Corey Smith. But shoot, if you were in a situation in the middle of the playoff where you found out Nick and or Kaytron were both gone, that's a big change for 2025, and that would change the way that you look at this team. And part of that, James touched on it, the offensive line. I'm curious from what you've seen in the times that you've attended practice, what you feel about the offensive line from what you've seen, because remember, they will get Anthony Donko back for training camp.
About the offensive line?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I think just overall, the offensive line at Penn State has been doing a tremendous job, and that's kudos to the offensive line coach, Phil Troutwine, just from the way that he's been bringing players in and the way that he's been essentially, developing them. And the way that, from just a raw material standpoint, they're big guys. So I think even from how playoff teams are supposed to look, they look that way up front on the offensive side of football.
The one thing, I was talking about it, how Franklin was trying to explain the conversations he was having during the playoff with a lot of these players, because Mark Ingram was like, oh, how'd you get a lot of these guys, this core, to return? Penn State's gotten a lot of praise for carrying over a lot of the core, the nucleus of the 2024 team that had a lot of success, and keeping a lot of guys that could have gone to the National Football League or could have hopped in the transfer portal for all we know. And one thing Franklin said is, quote, we're having these conversations during the playoffs. I'm trying to retain my team during the playoffs. We shouldn't have the transfer portal open during the playoff. We should be focused on trying to win a championship. We're having to have these conversations. It's really one conversation at a time. It's really what we've always done for years. We sit down with the player and the family, go over the information from the GMs and the scouts. It may be returning to complete their degree, as I was saying, to boost their draft stock or to pursue a championship. With team success comes individual recognition. And I think that's such an important thing to identify, and you deal with this constantly in the player evaluation world. I'm sure you've seen so many instances where it's like, boy, that was a great team I saw at the high school level, college, professional. And because that team was great, one person was able to gain a lot of recognition, but then it's diagnosing, is the player individually great, or did the pieces around him elevate that player? How difficult is it to see that, the forest through the trees?
Depends on what you're evaluating, right? I think when you're evaluating individual talent, you look at the individual. When you're looking at, I mean, like a college football playoff and kind of rank teams, I think you have to balance out all the different critical factors that go into a winning a football squad, whether it's how much they score in the red zone, turnover margin, and all those different things like that. And that's more of that organizational structure. So I think that's where it gets kind of complicated within the business, right? Like the individuals are all trying to perform, yes, for the team's sake of winning. Yeah, everybody wants to win, but everybody also has dreams of performing well to move on to the next level. So there's that push and pull of my individual accomplishments or just development versus the team success, because you can have both, right? You can have one without the other and not be mutually exclusive in the sense of have team success but not individually develop. You know what I mean? And then you kind of can't progress your career. So I think that's what I face in my business is what I'm referring to, is that like, hey, there's a different common thread. Regardless of high school that you go to, you still have to perform. Like, yeah, you might get a look because you're there, but that school doesn't make you a better player just because they're a winning football program.
Yeah, it can set you up for success. And even so much at the college level, I think those days, I don't know what your thought is, but in terms of like the NFL draft process.
My bad. But what it does is it raises the basement of you failing to an extent. Because like those
sure.
programs,
yeah.
I'm saying like from that standpoint, when we talked about the just organizational structure and that value of it, right? Just the artistry of winning. I think that's what you get accustomed to. That's probably the greatest value in being in a program. But again, when I told them, when you recruit a player, or even at Penn State, when they're trying to retain a player, that player, you can bring in the team and helping and things of that nature, but that player wants to know, what are you doing for them?
Mm-hmm.
And like, how does that affect me? You know what I mean? So you have to kind of merge the interests.
Well, you deal with this so much with LIG Sports Group. And I think the interesting thing, I was just about to say, like the NFL draft process, it feels like as the years go on, the brand next to your name, it's not that it doesn't mean anything, but it means less and less, and that you'll see players grabbed from literally all over the country. If your tape is available, they'll evaluate you.
It means less and less to the players that don't take advantage of it. I think it means a lot to the players that take full advantage of it. Like if you are associated with a fan base, let's take, for example, the guy up in Michigan, right? He gets drafted.
Underwood, yeah.
No, not Underwood.
Oh, just drafted?
Just drafted.
The D tackle?
Nope, the quarterback.
Oh, JJ McCarthy.
JJ McCarthy, he goes to Minnesota Vikings and he has the highest selling jersey since Tom Brady, he gets a $4 million check. So like even from his brand equity of being at Michigan and going to a place like Minnesota, he's able to still cash on in his individual process, and him being a Michigan quote unquote man and them identifying with him and that whole thing of winning the national championship, that team success, he was able to benefit from the quarterback standpoint. So it gets nuanced and charting from that standpoint, but most people aren't paying attention to it.
No, and I remember Last Chance U on Netflix and how many kids you saw that were very entitled, and it's like they get an offer from, I'll use Louisville, an ACC team as an example, and they're like, screw that. I'm going for an SEC offer or a Big Ten offer, that sort of thing. And it's like, boy, like evaluate these things one by one, and all these schools have different things they can offer at this point in time. It's just changed so much.
Yeah, because when you start talking to SEC schools, I mean, I just think it's a little different. I mean, it's just kind of, it's business first, right? And I think it depends on when you talk to other schools. It's like they kind of they present the things that a higher education or a higher university can provide, right? And and so you get a different player prototype that wants to just talk cash and where I'm trying to get to the NFL versus like, hey, the family wants. I want to get an engineering degree. I want to do this. I want to stay here for 4 years and then maybe transfer. And right, wrong, or indifferent, it works for both parties, right? If you find that right fit in that school that you align with. But where you find problems is like a player that's tricked into thinking like, hey, I need to be looking for the wrong thing at the wrong school. Like you say, it could be money. Right. It can be trying to please a coach or maintain a relationship that you don't really need to, or just out of fear. You know what I mean? Because that's where a lot of these things come from. It's a very emotional state in the terms of recruiting process, transfer portal, NIL negotiations, all those different things. And you're talking about 17 to 20-year-olds.
In this interview with the triple option, beyond the expectations for 2025, Urban Meyer did ask James Franklin about what's coming down the pike now that the House settlement has been reached, and you'll see very soon the advent of the CSC, the College Sports Commission. And Franklin responded to that eventually coming into effect, and he said, quote, "I think what the hope is that everybody has to sign in and agree to this. And if you're agreeing to all of this, the guidelines of how we're going to operate within this system, if you're in, then you're not going to sue." It's an interesting element. Franklin went on to say there is going to be an entity that is about enforcement, and this is going to be different than what we're used to. They're going to have subpoena power. They're going to be able to act and act swiftly, very similar to a Major League Baseball or NFL model. It's not going to be a situation where it takes 2 years and by then the coach is gone and a new coach is inheriting the situation. And he said, people like me, basically, which is exactly what happened to James Franklin in 2014. We all know that very well. And shoot, look at Sharon Moore at Michigan. The second Jim Harbaugh was out, hey, by the way, you guys are cheating. And now Sharon Moore is left holding the bag. So it's a really interesting future that we're looking at. And I think there's a lot of Penn State fans who remember the sanctions coming out of 2012, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, like those years. It was a miracle that Penn State was even putting something on the field and being competitive. So to hear that that's coming, what's your reaction?
I mean, it was, it's expected. You know what I mean? It's due. I mean, the players have been under this. Yeah, and the players have been under this model where it makes it kind of difficult, and it's a gray area, and it makes it for more predatory issues like around the game, right? And it starts to affect the product when you can't essentially discipline or predict what's going to be on the field. And there's, I think structure is good when you talk about a new league and things of that nature, but we know moving forward and just having to deal with the next fight of like employment status and collective bargaining and unionizing and making sure that all that stuff, who's going to actually pay the players. I think it's going to be a super league or a conference that's paying. So if the school's essentially paying, again, that employee status is going to come up. Start talking about insurance and workers' comp and all these different conversations where what is your actual compensation package as a employee to play football or play basketball or softball? And moving forward, I mean, it's going to be up to the teams to make sure that they have the proper support around to start with the right evaluations, put the right value on players, and make sure that they're being developed and deployed the right way.
Franklin went on to say, I think all this, the CSC, this change, he said, I think this is going to start with the presidents and the commissioners, to the point you were just saying. He said, there's going to be a financial element to this. So I expect everyone to sign it. They're still working through the details. They were waiting until the judge formally made the decision. Then there's the implementation committee. He went on to say this is revenue sharing rules and NIL rules under this umbrella. But I think football is pretty much going to be run by the CSC in the near future. In the past, the voting has been that all schools are treated the same, and we're not. I think we're close to achieving that. And the point that he was saying there in terms of like the voting is he was detailing that like an FCS school had as much of a vote, as much of a powerful vote as Ohio State or Penn State or Alabama, whatever. And it's kind of like looking at, I'm not most in tune with politics, but I forget which branch of Congress, if it's the House or the whichever it is, or it's like, okay, California's got 50 votes and Delaware's got like 2 or something like that. That's kind of the model that they want, because it doesn't make sense that, I don't know, name an FCS school like South Dakota State doesn't have as much of an impact on the overall business of major college football as Michigan. So why should it be 1 vote per school in Michigan and South Dakota State having the exact same amount of votes? So I see that. I can see why schools would push back on that, but you're getting more to a point where it's like, hey, these power conferences and these power teams, these blue bloods, these programs that bring in dollars, that bring in ratings, that put eyeballs out there, all that sort of stuff. They're going to have more power in this world. And it just, kind of makes sense. But I don't know if you see it the same way, but it just seems like the gap between the haves and have-nots is only going to get bigger.
I think, yes. I think in theory, yes, the gaps of the have and the have-nots will get bigger. But I keep leaning on, I mean, like decisions are made internally and just making sure that you are paying and getting the right players and the right coaches. I think now those gaps can be exposed a little bit if there's a cap and if they can police somewhat of the excessive spending. But I'm looking forward to it, to be completely honest, because it really, I think it shows the players and everyone kind of now playing with cards up, right? Before it was like, hey, we're going to school, we're doing this. And now it's like, hey, no, this is a business. You're worth this, you're worth that. This is what we're expecting. This is how you're going to get paid. And kind of makes things clear. Is just making sure that there's, again, the proper support around the whole infrastructure.
Tell us what you guys think. How do you feel about the future of the sport in regards to the CSC? Also, how do you feel about the expectations for Penn State football in 2025? How did you feel about what James Franklin said on the Triple Option podcast? You can check that out on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Rob Stone and company do a tremendous job. So great to hear some insight there from James Franklin on what the future of the sport looks like, what he feels this team, this Penn State football team, is going to look like in 2025. The overall expectations. So let us know in the comments section. Get at us on social media. We appreciate it so much here. We're all just counting down the days now until training camp gets started. A little over a month now. Can't wait. Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.